continuation of a meeting originally held last month. And we had the first part this morning. We said this would be in a dual format, so this afternoon at 2 p.m. was part one, so this is a continuation. As you probably already heard, there was news that broke regarding circumstances that we were unaware of, but that we're certainly aware of now. And so what I'm going to do is, before I go any further, I'm going to turn it over to Director Callahan so he can describe the chain of events that have occurred, bringing us to where we are today. And then we'll follow up, and we're going to open it up for questions from you folks. What we will not be doing, as we would have done if circumstances were different, is take public testimony. We will not be taking public testimony, but you're certainly welcome to come forward and ask questions. So, Director Callahan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, everyone. I will repeat myself from this morning or this afternoon's 2 o'clock meeting for the sake of those in the audience this evening who were not at the 2 o'clock meeting. And the first part of that should be my apologies. We are here tonight by error in the sense that sometime between 1995 and 1997, there were mapping errors that didn't bring forward a 1990 rezoning of this property from restricted residential to commercial. I will show some information on the slide in just a moment to confirm that. But I want to dwell just for a moment on the importance of an ordinance and why that is so critical for tonight's hearing. We and every municipality, to my knowledge, including both cities and counties, when I say municipality, change zoning by ordinance, and that is because it's law. Once an ordinance is passed, it remains in effect in perpetuity unless and until the legislative body changes the law. So in this case, the zoning was changed some 30 years ago. It remains in effect today. That much is indisputable. I had a question earlier today of how I know that the 1990 ordinance was proper and real. And the way I know that is simply looking at the ordinance and searching through the staff file that accompanied this ordinance. And by the way, we have all of the original staff file now online, available to the public. There's no need necessarily for an open records request. The easiest way would be just to call 446-1070 or my staff. They can all help anyone walk through our computerized system to pull up this and everything else we have on this file. But back to an ordinance and the significance of it. When you read through this ordinance, it expressly locates the property. I'll show you that on a map in just a moment. But it also shows you on the right side of the screen that it was duly signed and authorized by the county commissioners at that time and attested by the clerk right there. That's what makes it unambiguous to me that this is our current zoning. It was followed through with the then zoning map, which was a hand-drawn map. Up until, in most places and here, up until the 80s, most every community, and we did too, did everything on a zoning map by hand. Some sophisticated communities, and you can see here, use what's called zipatone. That's how you get this nice even shading. But here you can see where the staff just took a red marker and colored in. If you look closely, you see the yellow underneath. So the red is literally covering over the restricted residential zoning that used to be there and is acknowledged in the ordinance that I just showed you. So we know that the staff did the right thing at that moment in time. That proves it. And it even goes right along the right-of-way line of the highway, which is what's described in the ordinance that I just had on the screen. Where the plot starts to thicken and things start to break down is in the 90s, when we transitioned from hand-drawn maps to computerized maps. The first version of the county's computerized map was run on an AutoCAD system, which was state-of-the-art at that time and is still a good program. But it doesn't talk well, if you will, with GIS systems, meaning the programming for AutoCAD is very different and the files are very different from the files for ISRI's GIS system, which is what we now have. And so there's the potential for miscommunication in loading an AutoCAD file into a GIS file. And it looks as though the staff sometime in the 90s intervened between 95 and 97, for instance. You see how this yellow line is changed over here, and the staff decided to just take it out. I can't say why, but what it appears to be going on is that they decided that the zoning should follow the ordinary high water mark, which would be approximately here, which is the water level in the lake. I can't say that for certain, but it does explain why, if I was to go to today's GIS file, you would see that this area is now shown as restricted residential, which is the yellow on the map. So again, I can't unchisel the stone of this situation, and I have no ability to tell you that you should do anything other than to take question and answer tonight and not take any testimony, because in my view, the zoning is changed. There's no reason to have this hearing or the previous hearings. That much I'm sorry for. I have instituted 2 things, and the staff's on top of it now, to prevent this sort of thing from happening in the future. One, quickly, is that we're going through all of our maps that showed the original zoning and then comparing that to today's GIS system, and we're going to do that map by map and section by section and make sure that we think it's fine. And then as a second safeguard, anytime one of our planners are handling a zoning case, they're going to start from the beginning of zoning time, which was 1973 in this county, and bring it forward so we know the entire history of any piece of property. That should prevent this from ever happening again. One other thing that I want to stress is that even though the zoning's changed and now the commercial zoning allows what Mr. Condon wants to do as a by right use, our current regulations still require what's noticed as in our code as a special notice process. And that's an administrative procedure by which the staff reviews and makes a determination of whether this is going to be a proper fit in the neighborhood. We will look at such things as traffic, including turning movements, times of operation, hours of operation, lighting, trash receptacles, anything that could possibly impact neighbors or the public in a way that's usually guided by land use decisions. I will make a final determination, yes or no. That can be appealed by any affected person to you as a public hearing, and then we will be right back here if that's what happens. And that can also be done by Mr. Condon, so any affected person or the applicant. So in that way, I feel and I believe that regardless of the fact that we're not here before you as a rezoning, there still are adequate safeguards for good planning practice. I believe that covers everything I wanted to mention tonight. Do you have any questions of me? Thank you. I'm going to leave the pointer here in case anyone wants to change the...
So before I call Rand Whitman, a consultant for the Congress, let me just say that I failed to mention, I'd like to introduce some of our people here. Pays to turn it on, doesn't it? Okay. Long day. Okay, so on the terminal is our communications manager, Nancy Jones. By the way, this is being live streamed, so people can watch it on YouTube as we proceed. Next to Nancy is Mary Shaw, planning manager, Pat Braden, deputy civil prosecuting attorney, and of course, Director Callahan. I should ask once again, for the sake of the record, do we have any conflicts of interest? We do not, and of course, that's Kathy Ford. There's no timer because one isn't needed this evening. So, Rand, take it away, sir.
Good evening, Commissioners. Again, Rand Wickman for the record. I'm happy to be here tonight. I wish it was a little different circumstances, but here we are. Just a couple of quick notes from continuation from this afternoon's discussion. Staff took a little bit of a beating this afternoon, and I think that's unfortunate. As you may know, I have done their jobs. I've done Vlad's job, who's not here tonight. I've done Mary's job. I've done David's job. I've not done Catherine's job because I lack the requisite skills for that. But I know how difficult their jobs are. They are underpaid. They are underappreciated. We don't always agree. Sometimes they make mistakes. Sometimes I make mistakes. But that doesn't make any of us bad people. It makes us people. And that's what we do. We make mistakes. We sometimes don't agree with each other. But they've always been agreeable in their approach. And I very much appreciate working with them. I think David specifically has made substantial improvements to the way that department functions since he's been there. That department will always be a work in progress because this stuff is hard. It's complicated, and it involves people, and people are very passionate about land and their land uses. And so I think David's likely a better director than I was there. I'm happy to say that. I think we're lucky to have him. And so with that, I would say thank you to the staff. I think they're doing a very good job and a very difficult job. Having said that, I would like to formally withdraw the request here tonight, the zone change request. With David's presentation, we concur that it is not necessary, and so we are formally withdrawing our application. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Rand Wickman? Thank you, Rand.
Thank you.
So again, folks, just for the record, this is case number ZON 18-0016. Who would like to speak? We're entertaining questions. If you have any concerns that we can address for you. Sir, please come forward. Come. We'll need your name and address, sir.
John Lee, 2160 East St. James Avenue, Hayden, Idaho. I was just wondering, and I'm interested in watching how government is working, and I think you should be able to answer the question, who and when was this mistake, and how was this mistake found? I think you should know it by now because it's been an issue that's been up for,
Well,
questions.
from what my understanding, obviously, we didn't find it as commissioners. It was actually discovered, I think, by Rand Wickman. Rand was going through the original decision, and unless you read the entire decision, if you were to stop, my understanding is part of the way through, it would sound as though the restricted residential zoning was still in effect. But if you read further, you'll see that, in fact, that decision was changed, and the zone was changed to commercial. And so it was basically Rand who found out. Rand communicated it to David. David also did the research, and the end result is the order of decision that you see there.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I'm Gary High. I live at 867 East Pine Ridge Drive, Harrison, Idaho. And I'm a member of Eastside Fire and Harrison Ambulance. I have a series of questions. I was reading through the statement that was presented to us today. So you're going to be using that piece of property to offload or onload equipment? Is that right?
David, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, it's a little awkward for me to go back and forth on this because I wasn't the case planner on this case. I think, Mary, are you up for it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And then we may have to defer to Rand or Mr.
That's fine. That's okay.
Don't start a clock. Okay.
No, we're not timing it here.
For the record, I'm Mary Shaw, Planning Manager. Hello. The applicant submitted a request for rezone in 2018 to rezone a portion of the property from restricted residential to commercial to be used for a dock, building, rehab type of a business. And the applicant may correct me if I misspeak, but that is to the best of my knowledge. Over the course of time, the applicant worked with staff and tried to address community concerns by providing a proposed conditional zoning development agreement to better address more specific aspects of the use. The applicant actually also supplied a site plan as to what would be proposed on the site. It is, as I recall, a small structure, up to 8 employees. They worked with the highway district to talk about the number of traffic trips. Of course, the county only regulates that portion of the property that's above the ordinary high water mark. So anything beyond on the lakeside is under the jurisdiction of Idaho Department of Lands.
So am I thinking that they're going to be building docks there, and then they're going to be floating them out of there, transporting them to the various?
That question is probably better directed to the applicant, but to the best of our knowledge, we believe that they were transporting materials to offload on the dock, which would then be offloaded onto a truck and transported on the land from there. Does that answer your question?
It still doesn't sound like, why are we offloading and onloading here when you could keep it on the truck and maybe save some time and money?
I can't answer the specifics of how this business operates. I apologize for that.
Okay. Also, I saw up there that there had been some sort of traffic count done, but I didn't see a date on it. On something like 250 cars during a day, 25 an hour, something like that. But has that been updated? Has there been a count taken from Highway 90 around to Beauty Bay to include the Mineral Ridge boat launch area?
I'll let Rand address that.
Actually, David, if you want.
It's in,
Oh, yeah, go right ahead.
it's on the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I saw it, but I didn't know how,
There we go.
keep going. There. How recent is that?
That is out of our code for special notice permit requirements.
That's the current code, and that was originally consolidated in 2016.
Okay. You realize there's been a lot of houses built out in that our side of town now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think you ought to update that. Also, as the commissioners, have you been out to see this piece of property physically?
Okay, so this is a quasi-judicial hearing, or was a quasi-judicial hearing up to the revelations today. So we would have had to go out as a group in a single vehicle with a recorder, with a clerk and a recorder. So the answer is no, we've not gone as a group. Am I familiar with it? Yes, because I owned land out there for 15 years.
Thank you. There's a rumor running around that they've already started dredging. Is that possible?
I cannot answer that.
And would that be disturbing that lake bottom that's?
Mr. Chairman, that would be IDL's jurisdiction. My understanding is no such dredging has occurred.
All right. That's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Last call. Okay. So the applicant through their consultant, Rand Wickman, is withdrawing the application. So there's really no decision before us at this time. So Pat, I guess I'm going to defer to you. Do we need is there even a formal motion called for here, Pat?
I think, just to keep the record clean, I would recommend that there be a motion to dismiss based on the withdrawal of the application by the applicant and on the basis of mootness.
And on the basis of what, I'm sorry?
Mootness.
Oh, mootness, okay. New word, okay. Motion then?
I move that we dismiss case number ZON 18-0016 based on the fact that the applicant has withdrawn.
And mootness. I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chairman Philios.
Aye, and the motion is carried. The case ZON 18-0016 is hereby dismissed. Time is 6:22. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.